than sufficient to provide any mitigation as far as mass and also ensure privacy. So that concludes my presentation. It's not a big ask, and we look forward to your anticipated approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuratani. At this time, any members of the public wish to speak on this project? No? All right. You have 3 minutes to keep speaking. You can rebuttal yourself. You
It's
can
been a
do-
pleasure,
Rebut
Board.
yourself.
It's been a pleasure.
You have questions of the applicant?
No.
No. All right, so the public hearing is then closed. Word comments, discussions?
Sure.
You'd like to
So-
go first?
Having seen this 4 years ago, I just want to re-clarify that the house was built under different jurisdiction other than Laguna Beach. It was built under county originally, and it had a lot of nonconformities, and that's why this is such a significant structure. I do find the project to be neighborhood compatible as the neighboring homes are very vertical. I think the additions and the little tweak modifications that you're seeking are very modest and, you know, probably inside appropriate given the topography. You know, would want you to be able to use a restroom on a level where you go to the pool instead of just using the pool. But I don't think it adds to mass and scale. The tree thing was something that I had saw because looking at the landscape of the neighboring properties, they were all pretty shielded of the lower, more single 2-level homes that are on the street down below. And I thought that was an appropriate application. The magnolia tree blocks that new habitable space in a good manner and does not add to mass and scale. So that was my concern at the site. So I appreciate the applicant for following up on that. Other than that, the variance requests are all consistent and the staff report I'm supportive of, so.
And I would concur. I think that having seen it before, I think that this is a nice tucking, you know, you're tucking in a little thing here and a little thing there. And I think that the variance is really, can absolutely support the variance as well. I think it makes a lot of sense and it's just very minor change to the overall conditions, and I think it's a nice project.
And I can go, and I also concur with my colleagues. I wasn't part of the initial design review, but it appears you've done everything to meet the criteria and made the adjustments requested and some of those your little walkway, catwalk and such. And I think it's going to be a great home, and I can approve the project.
I'll be brief. I echo what my colleagues have said. Key is there's no apparent impacts on the neighborhood. It's a more efficient use of space, particularly at the lower level. The building height is unaffected by the variance. It's not atypical where the height of the building's not increased, but where additional floor space at a lower level is requested that we grant variances. So this is a typical variance and fully appropriate for this project, and I support it.
And I support what my colleagues have said, and I support staff's report. I have nothing further to add. It's a great project. You made a nonsense of a space become usable. So nice job. Good creation.
It's true. So with that, Chair, I'll make a motion.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I move to adopt Resolution 24-0535, approving design review 24-0535 and variance 24-0536 for additions, exterior door and window changes, roof overhang, deck area reductions, new awnings, grading, modification to landscaping, and finding said action exempt from CEQA guidelines per section 15301.
And
Chair,
Chair,
if I may, the board may want to include in the motion the addition of the landscaping modification.
It mentions landscaping changes in the motion. I just did.
Okay.
No,
I heard
the
it too.
changes from the exhibit that the applicant presented, that additional tree.
And an additional tree. So specifically mention the addition of the something magnolia tree.
Magnolia St. Mary's tree. One more
Magnolia St. Mary's tree. Okay.
And I'll second that.
All right. Mrs. John, can I get a roll call? Or
Board Member
a
Coveney.
vote call?
Yes.
Board Member Gibbs.
Yes.
Board Member Weil,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Neve,
Yes.
and Chair Gannon.
Yes,
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
thank you.
Thank you.
Are the applicants here for 5.2 Bluebird? 1260 Bluebird?
Nope, I haven't seen
Okay,
it.
so we're going to move on to 5.4, located at 31351 and 31355 Coast Highway. Will the applicants please come to the table? Board ex parte?
Yes, I met at the site, I met with Todd Skandarian and Michael and not with Larry, but at a
And
site visit.
I met with Todd Skandarian and Michael Kelly. Wilkes.
Wilkes, Mike Wilkes.
I didn't get to meet with Michael Wilkes, but I did get to meet with Todd Skandarian.
Well, I met with both Todd and Michael.
And I met with Michael and Todd as well at the site. Mrs. Sharma, will you please give a staff presentation?
Of course. Good evening, Chair Gannon and members of the board. Shweta Sharma, Senior Planner, presenting design review and coastal development permit for 31351 and 31355 Coast Highway. I do have a presentation. Let me share it on the Zoom. As you can see from the aerial, the subject property is located west of Coast Highway with this is not in presenter view. Sure. Sure. If we can go to the second slide. All right. Now that we've got that sorted. As you can see from the aerial, the subject property is located west of Coast Highway with neighboring residences to the north and south and Camel Point Beach to the west. The oceanfront property is developed with an approximately 4,100 square foot residence, attached two-car garage, gazebo, and potting shed. The existing dwelling was constructed in 1930 under county jurisdiction. The applicant, Todd Skandarian, is requesting a design review and coastal development permit for new landscaping on an oceanfront coastal bluff in the R1 zone and for modifications to a prior design review board approval. On September 25th, 2014, the Design Review Board conditionally approved Design Review 14-1639, Variance 14-1641, and Coastal Development Permit 14-1643. The Design Review Board included a condition of approval that when there was any change to landscaping or regarding the landscape or hardscape to the property, that they be done in accordance with a Cultural Resources Management Plan and subject to Design Review Board approval. On September 22nd, 2022, the Design Review Board conditionally approved Design Review and Coastal Development Permit to install fencing on the property. The project was then appealed to the Coastal Commission and the approval was overturned at the April 2023 meeting. In coordination with the Coastal Commission, staff has reviewed the current proposal for landscaping in lieu of the fencing as the preferred project alternative. Other than minor repair and restoration of an existing step stepping stone path north of the existing dwelling. No new structures or alterations to the hardscape or existing structures are proposed as part of this project. The existing chain link fence is proposed to be removed. These plans have been reviewed by city's landscape architect and determined that they are compliant with our landscape and scenic highway resources document, as well as guidelines and standards for landscape maintenance where fire safety is a concern. Staff has analyzed the applicant's request with respect to the city's development standards and determined that the project is compliant with zoning codes and general plan policies and design review guidelines. To date, the project has received no letters from the public. On this project, I have been informed by the applicant that they did meet with their neighbors earlier today, and after that meeting, have discussed revisions to the landscape plan. Next slide. Staff recommends that the Design Review Board adopt Resolution 24-013, approving Design Review 24-013 and Coastal Development Permit 24-014 for new landscaping, and that the proposed project is categorically exempt from CEQA pursuant to sections 15304 for minor alterations to land and 15331 historic resources restoration and rehabilitation. That concludes my presentation. The applicant is available and will also have a short presentation and is available to respond to any questions as am I.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sharma. Anyone have questions for staff?
I just had one. I didn't hear clearly. Are you saying that there's been recent revisions to the landscape plan based upon the meeting with the neighbors?
Yes, the neighbors meeting occurred earlier today, and there have been some slight revisions to ensure neighbors being happy with the proposed landscape plan.
Has there been anything submitted in writing?
There is a revised landscape plan that the applicant and the landscape architect will discuss and as part of their presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Larry Noakes? 5 minutes.
Todd and Michael, on this matter, this is a continuing effort of Mr. Corwin to secure his property. Many of you were here in 2022 when the fence was approved. And the reason the fence was approved is because there was a recognized security issue. We went to Coastal Commission. They decided the fence was a structure, even though it was secured in a very responsible way to the ground that would come immediately loose. They wanted us to secure it with vegetation. So we are securing the property with vegetation. That's what this plan is. That's what this effort is. That's why this landscape plan has been devised. And we are here tonight to hopefully have this landscape plan approved. Through the landscape plan, Jack hopes to be able to actually secure his property, to be able to enjoy a sense of safety while he's there and while he's away. And Michael and Todd are here to discuss the design and answer any questions you might have with regard to the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Noakes. Mr. Wilks, do you plan on continuing?
I'll speak during the rebuttal.
Okay. At this time, any member of the public wish to speak on this project? You have 3 minutes. Going once, going twice. All right, Mr. Wilks, you have the table.
Thank you, Chair Gannon and members of the Design Review Board. My name is Michael Wilks. I'm the landscape architect for the project. Along with meeting with all of you, except Lewis this week, we've been meeting directly several times with the neighbors, 2 to the south and 1 to the north. The 2 neighbors directly south of the project have some view concerns. And as a result, we've made some changes to the landscape plan, which are reflected in the plans that you see here above you. Those changes include limiting the height of any existing or new vegetation in the triangular, that's the red area on the upper right, to 6 feet. Restricting the cypress trees along the 2 property lines that border those houses to the south to 12 feet maximum. They're currently 10 to 12 feet, and any higher than 12 feet could impact views. They were previously indicated to be 25 feet on the plan. We verified the heights of other vegetation such as one acacia tree on the, it would be the east property line. And I found it to be 2 feet over height of what we were proposing. And so that tree will need to be reduced in height. We also eliminated 2 Torrey pines that were previously proposed at the bottom right and left corners of the property. And we replaced one cypress tree with a lower growing oak tree. And we're proposing to replace the dead cypress tree with a new cypress tree in exactly the same location. All these changes were reviewed with the neighbors directly to the south this morning. That concludes, my description of the changes.
Okay.
Okay.
Board, would you like to question the applicant? That was the rebuttal.
That's the rebuttal. I was just gonna say, are you sure you don't want to add any of those jumping choyas?
We do have some Opuntia, so I think we're covered.
Okay. I
Mr.
don't have
Gibbs, you
any
got the floor.
questions.
No, my question is the plan that you're showing us, the L 2.1, the same plan as in the agenda item, or is this a revised plan?
This is the revised plan.
Okay, and has this been sent to the?
It has been sent to staff. It's being shared with the neighbors this morning. And I've also created a narrative of those changes. I'm not sure if that was sent to staff. Okay.
Okay, does staff have this that we can incorporate into a motion if we approve the project?
Yes.
What's its title? Exhibit B?
It will now end up being, I think, Exhibit C. I think there are already additional exhibits.
I have one other question though, before we. One of the things, so we'll be able to do that. One of the things that I asked Mike, you and Todd, when I was out there, is to make sure that all the height limitations for the landscaping to accommodate or to, address view issues on adjoining neighbors be set forth in the plan. I just want to verify on the record that all those height limitations are now in this revised plan.
Correct.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Any
So,
further questions?
Just for clarification, it's the same plan, just with more of the few removals and the height exhibits.
Correct.
You've just made modifications for the maintenance.
The previous
schedule for
plan
those work.
included 2, 3,
Yeah, I think it had
seven,
those. height
seven
limit-
trees, and now we're only proposing 5,
Right.
all of which have much lower height maximums than the previously proposed.
And if I may, Chair, the board may refer to the plan as sheet L-2.1 as revised and depicted during the board meeting on this item.
And depicted. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? No? Okay, public hearing is officially closed. Board comments?
Yeah, so
Well-
been with the projects for a long time. It's sad to see that the fencing that was late approved to secure one's property was denied. That's a travesty to the property owner. And probably an overreach from the Coastal Commission in their deliberation. Someone should have the right to secure their property within the reasonable means. But to do it in vegetation, I believe you guys do that. You're doing it in the right practice, following the right guidelines from the scenic highways and the right exposure. It's an appropriate landscape for the site. It will be beautiful. And I think with the latest revisions of kind of more the maintenance schedule for heights is friendly to the neighbors and will maintain views correspondingly. So I'm supportive of the revised changes this evening and looking forward to letting them finish up their project.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yeah, a couple things. One is, it's an incredible piece of property. And it's, the hardscape is interesting. It's, you know, I understand the restrictions and the fact that your client has taken this on and, you know, maintained it with those, you know, restrictions historically, including the inability to do any significant hardscape. Nonetheless, it was amazing walk. Secondly, I was going to make the point too. I think this is a gross overreach by the Coastal Commission. And, you know, as kind of a person who's been involved in land use as an attorney for a long time, I've seen excesses, but this is on a personal level, not being able to secure your property. And I went through with both Michael and Todd, kind of how they were going to secure it with the opening. In a way, maybe the landscaping will be more beautiful than a fence, and hopefully it will be as safe as a fence. But I think it's really unfortunate. That said, there is nothing to object about this project, and I think you've accommodated the neighbors, you know, as you should, and as I would expect, knowing, you know, the applicant group would do. So, you know, I wanted to make the point about the Coastal Commission. So with that said, I support the project.
And I would also support the project. I concur with what my board member said here, and I appreciate the efforts made. They seem pretty excessive, and I'm sure was quite, the whole journey here has been quite hard on everybody, to say the least. I'm new at all this, and it's still interesting to see how this all develops. So it's going to be beautiful. I hope you can enjoy your home. I hope you live there safely, and I can get behind this project. Thank you.
Mrs. Neve?
Yes, and I concur. I mean, I've been involved in this project for a long time, and it's unbelievable that it's taken so long. I think that this is, it's an amazing piece of property. I think that this landscape plan is phenomenal. And I agree. I think there was an overreach of Coastal, but I think you guys are hopefully finally going to be able to close the book on this one. And I can fully support it.
Thank you. And I have nothing further to add. I support the board's comments. I support staff's report, and beautiful project, beautiful landscape. Mr. Wilks, you're one of a kind. Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval?
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
before a motion is made, I just wanted to bring to the attention of the board that because a revised landscape plan was presented at the meeting tonight, it didn't have the benefit of being reviewed by the landscape plan, the city's consulting landscape architect. So I would suggest including a condition of approval that the revised landscape plan be subject to review and of approval by the city's consulting landscape architect for compliance with the city's landscape requirements.
Okay.
I know that a number of the items have been removed or just limitations in height, but there were some replacement species proposed, and I just want to make sure that those are
Okay, so
compliance.
we would.
Is that necessary?
We would word it a condition of approval subject to the review of the city's landscape architect.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Gibbs, will you give us?
Wait, hang on. May I ask one question? To the
Yes.
landscape architect. Michael, can I ask you a question? Yes. The tree you're replacing, is it on the list of approved trees for this zone?
There's no specific landscape scenic highways trees that are required or specified for this site.
Okay.
We're not introducing any new trees that weren't already on the
On the
the
site.
plant legend.
Okay,
They-
so the
Okay.
trees
There
were
are,
already
So
clear.
we're doing two things. We're reducing the heights of
Yeah.
existing plants,
yeah.
and we eliminated one species entirely. And we're not introducing any
Anything new.
new species. We're only changing
Look,
a couple of the species out and relocating one.
okay.
Right, so that's
So I
fine.
don't think,
Oh, okay.
Do we
I'm
need-
not supportive of what staff just recommended based on
I-
that. Sorry
I
for the
agree.
That's okay.
clarification.
I just wasn't sure.
With
Okay,
all
thank
due
you for the
respect.
clarification, but yeah, I thought new species were being
It
introduced.
was just a swap and more of a
Yeah.
height requirement is what my understanding. of the
Correct.
Noted.
change
Good.
is.
It's diminutive from what we had previously proposed.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Good.
Do we have a,
Sure. Okay,
Mrs. Neve?
yes, let me just find it. Okay. So I move to adopt resolution 24-103 and approving design review 24-0103 and coastal development permit 24-0104 for new landscaping, and finding that the action exempt from CEQA guidelines per section 15304 and section 15331. And please note that we are approving the new landscape plan indicated on L-2.1, which limits the height in the triangular red area to 6 feet. And the cypress trees on that border to a max of 12 feet. On the east property line, the acacia tree will be reduced 2 feet, eliminate 2 Torrey pines, and replace 1 cypress with the oak and the dead cypress in kind. And I believe that's about it.
And we're going to clean up the palm fronds in the existing palm tree.
And clean up the palm fronds in the existing palm tree. So this is a revised landscape plan that has been submitted during this meeting.
Second.
Board Member Coveney,
Yes.
Board Member Gibbs,
Yes.
Board Member Weil,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Neve,
Yes.
and Chair Gannon.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
No, it's closed. Okay. Yeah, I did. Okay, so next on the agenda, 5.5, located at 489 Astor Street. Todd Skadarian, you're there. Daniel Latham, are you presenting? Okay, so we'll do that next.
Are you doing Astor?
We're doing Astor,
Yeah.
489 Astor Street.
You didn't say I'm out. I have to recuse.
Just Sam. Okay, do we have ex parte? And I'd like to note that Mr. Gibbs had to abstain. He's within the noticing area
Perfect.
Recuse, yeah.
or recusing.
Chair, for ex parte, I spoke with Todd Skandarian and visited the site.
And I also spoke with Todd Skandarian and visited the site.
I also spoke with Tom Skadarian and visited the site.
Ditto. Mr. Wank, staff presentation, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Design Review Board and members of the public. Item 5.5 is a request for design review at 489 Astor Street, located in the R1 zone. The site is currently developed with a single-family dwelling and garage. Design review is required for a deck addition, upper level addition, and landscaping. The applicant proposes the conversion of existing deck to habitable space, a 189 square foot deck addition, and landscaping to remain. Staff recommends that the board adopt resolution 24-0850, approving design review 24-0850 for a deck addition, upper level addition, landscaping, and finding said action exempt from CEQA. That will conclude my staff summary, and I'm available for any questions.
You, board, do you have any questions of staff? Okay,
Thank you. I'm Todd Skandarian, architect representing the Sultan family who's with us here this evening. Staff's introduction summarized our request for this application, and I can just go ahead and answer any questions. Thank you.
okay. At this time, any member of the public wish to speak on this project? This is 489 Astor Street. Going once, going twice? No? All right. 3 minutes.
No, thank you.
Okay. Board, do you have questions of the applicant? All right. Do we have comments? We're sleeping on this one.
I think this is a very, very minor ask and visited the site. There are no neighbor concerns. And I think it's a nice addition and it kind of completes that extension of the the deck, I think fits in very nicely as it moves across the, I don't know, whatever I'm trying to say, across the house. And I don't have any concerns whatsoever. I think it's certainly neighborhood compatible and meets all the design review criteria. And I think it's a great staff report. You're at.
Chair, and I'd concur with my colleague. It's a modest addition. It's very compatible to the architectural style of the home. in a seamless way. I didn't see any view impacts or issues. None were brought forward from the public. It is neighborhood compatible, and I'm fully supportive of the project this evening.
I also concur with my two colleagues on all the same points regarding design review criteria. It's design integrity, the neighborhood compatibility. It's a nice modest addition, and I can get behind the project.
And I too, I concur with board comments and staff report. Mr. Wank, great job on your staff report.
Mhm.
And do I have a motion to approve?
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I would like to suggest some minor revisions to the resolution after hearing the board deliberations. Specifically under design review criteria number 1, criteria 11 relating to privacy. I would just suggest it read, quote, "The board does not have privacy concerns regarding the project as the addition is located in an area that was previously deck, which is an activity area. The design is removing an activity area. Therefore, this criterion has been met." And then under design review finding number 1, criteria 16, view equity, I would suggest changing the facts, clarifying the facts to read as follows. "The board does not have view equity concerns regarding the project as the proposed addition is designed to match the ridge height of the existing structure. Therefore, this criterion has been met." The reason for these changes is that the draft resolution had comments by staff as opposed to the board. So I just wanted to switch it to the board making those findings as opposed to staff.
And are those updated in our staff reports?
No, because they were a minor modification, I am just suggesting reading those changes into the record.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully those can be
Anybody like to tackle that
edited in
one?
the future prior to hearings, and linked into the executive summary for where it needs attention as prior. Yes, to the attorney's point, I did not see privacy concerns for that finding as well.
And also view equity.
And I commented on view equity, so which our statements and comments override the staff report in different, or at least that's my historical notion.
I agree. I believe that the board deliberated on view equity and privacy. I just wanted to clarify that the findings of the board as a body are reflected in the resolution as opposed to individual comments of the members.
Did, okay.
To be sure it's in the motion. Go for it, Will.
Oh, you're up.
All right, for item number 5.5 at project location 489 Astor Street, the board approves design review 24-08 or 50 for the proposed project includes the deck addition, upper level addition, and landscaping. Staff has analyzed the applicant's request and believes, and shoot, it's all rewritten in different ways. Hold on, let me go back. Sorry. Let me start over. Design review, the board approves project location 489 Astor Street, design review 240850, approving the deck additions, upper level additions that exceed 15 feet in height, landscaping, and the finding set action exempt for CEQA under section 15301 as findings provided by the board, and further for the items that staff left in the staff report under privacy. Board does not find issues with privacy, that the design review criteria is met, and view equity was also met by the board's findings.
And to adopt the resolution as revised by
And-
the deputy city attorney.
To adopt the resolution as advised by the city attorney.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Mrs. Strong?
Board Member Coveney,
Yes.
Board Member Weil,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Neve,
Yes.
and Chair Gannon.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
And now we move on, 5.2, 1260 Bluebird Drive. Yeah, that's him. Bluebird Drive, for design review 23-0984 for coastal development permit 23-0985. Board, do we have ex parte? Mr. Weil?
Visited the site and spoke with Warren Hutcherson.
No, that's the
No.
wrong one. This is a
No,
blue
we're on
one.
Five point
five point two.
Oh, so you cut back?
1260 Bluebird, yeah.
Got a
All right,
5.2.
hold on. Visited the site and spoke with Chris Prelitz.
And I visited the site and texted back and forth with the architect.
I just visited the site multiple times.
Yes, I visited the site as well.
And I too visited the site and emailed with Mr. Peters. Mr. Latham?
Thank you, Chair Gannon. I'm Daniel Latham. Item 5.2 is design review and coastal development permit for 1260 Bluebird Canyon Road. The project site is located in Bluebird Canyon. The proposed project is a new single-family home with a pool and spa. The project was heard on April 25th, 2024. At the meeting, the Design Review Board requested a reduction of the number of lights, including the step lights, pool, and building lights, and to shift and lower the roof and implement a darker pool color. The revised plans have since been submitted and incorporate the requested changes from the board at the previous hearings. Part of the project also includes an off-site parking plan, and it should be noted that public correspondence was received and there were concerns about the 2 spaces over by the hairpin turn over here. It should be noted that the board has an option to approve or not approve replacement parking. And only 1 new parking space is required because this project site has more than 50 feet of frontage per the code. And that does conclude my presentation. We recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Latham. Does anyone on the board have questions for staff?
Just clarification, Daniel, are you saying that those 2 parking spaces at the hairpin turn are not required for this project?
They're not required.
Why were they put in the first place?
Because it should be.
So
Mhm.
let Jane.
Yeah.
Oh, I can take it. Yeah. It was previously proposed so that there would be no loss of parking.
Because
By
of
the
the 3 spaces up above.
There would be 2 spaces lost as a result of the project. And there are a total of 4 now. The current proposal is to have 5 parking spaces.
Okay, I went out there and walked it. Whose land is it on the down, the Bluebird Canyon side of the road?
That's city-owned land for those 2 spaces.
Yeah, can those trees be cut down so that there is visibility for that parking?
That you could implement a condition to do
Did the
so.
city do that?
It is something
Sorry,
that
is it?
We'll
is
get
it
to
on-
deliberations, but I
it
mean, just,
depends on what
my
tree
point
you're
is
talking
those,
about, I
there's
guess.
2 big trees on each side, which make that parking dangerous. If those trees are removed, then people could see it coming up Bluebird and down Bluebird toward that parking. So I think it's an incredibly dangerous location for parking if there's vegetation. If there's no vegetation, I think it's something to discuss.
Sure.
So I have a question. Sorry, Daniel, I'm not clear on this. Could you just reiterate what the actual requirements are, the 2-car garage and then the pad? What counts as what, and make sure we're clear
Sure.
about that?
So for on-site parking, you need at least 2 covered spaces. For this particular house, it's over 3,600 square feet, and a 3rd parking space is required. That can be covered or uncovered. In this case, it's proposed uncovered on the property. And then for off-site parking, you need 1 off-site parking space, and that's about it. So.
That clarification. Mhm. Yeah, so the public meeting is declared now open. Mr. Peters, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Austin Peters, the architect and owner's representative. First of all, my apologies for running late, and I appreciate you shifting shifting around. Appreciate that. Daniel, could you please go to the presentation? So I just wanted to summarize the changes and then also talk briefly about parking. Actually, could you just go to page 2, please, Daniel? This This slide demonstrates the roof lowering. The section A shows the upper roof over the garage and entry, in essence, was lowered by reducing the pitch that decreased the ridge of that roof by 2 feet. The roof in just below that, sort of the middle roof line, was lowered between about 2 and over 2 feet, depending on the roof line. And then the very lowest roof was lowered about almost 3 feet, 2.92 feet. Also, as a result, the rear patio, as you can see, was lowered 2 feet. So that was reflagged and seemed to reduce the view impact for those neighbors who had expressed concern. So this was a pretty significant change. It didn't change the floor plan per se, but a little bit with the stairs and so forth. But overall, the configuration is the same. It's just into the grade more. Slide 2, please, or actually slide 3. So just to summarize here, a more diverse palette of planting consistent with the city's list was utilized, and there's substantially more planting utilized in the plan as well. So this would be a more sort of lush palette. What we felt also was very consistent with the planting in the area. The idea is that this would feel, a very native feel, this planting palette. Furthermore, as you could see, a darker color for the pool color, it's sort of a tile blend of blue and blacks was used. Next slide, please. And then lastly, the lighting fixtures, the luminaries was decreased substantially, and the number of lighting fixtures was decreased substantially as a response to the comments from last hearing. And a brief comment about the parking. So the way the parking worked is that the parking, actually 1270 Bluebird, which is approved next door, they had the similar requirement, and they replaced their parking basically by shifting it in front of, my owner's lot, right? And so then we were like, okay, well, we have to shift it even further. Obviously, it wasn't our goal to add it on the corner. What I did was, when I saw the requirement, I put together a plan, and I don't know how many, there were 10. Oh, I just walked the area and I showed to Public Works, hey, these are the areas perhaps parking could go, expecting them to evaluate the safety and everything. So what they basically did is struck a lot of them out. They said, no, 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 no. And then the one this is what was remaining. So just to give you some history, that's kind of where we came from. Neither I or the owner are really obviously crazy about having that parking spot there. And I certainly would question the safety and would certainly lean on Public Works to evaluate if that's a safe spot. And one thought that I had is, I wonder if considering Morningside, which is really just, actually, Daniel, could you go to the vicinity map, please? Morningside Drive is just right there, and there's always abundant there. Every time I've been there, any time of the day, there's abundant parking on Morningside, and I just wonder if that could be considered. Since we're already so far down Bluebird, we're pretty close to that anyway. Does it make sense to consider Morningside as the replacement parking? I don't know how that works from a, approval or evaluation standpoint, but it's just a thought there. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Board, do you have comments or
Well, no,
questions for?
You gotta finish the public hearing. So there's public.
No.
Well,
Did you ask for?
I think
no,
we can ask them just a
yeah.
question, because there's an inconsistency here.
Oh, public.
But we're in the process of.
I don't know.
Them proposing.
Anyway, let's go ahead. We can wait, because
Okay, any member of the public wish to speak on this project? You have 3 minutes. Please come to the podium.
Oh, good evening, Design Review Board and staff. It's great seeing you all here. Jessica, so glad you can make it back on the dais. And Chris Prelitz, I live at 1215 Bluebird Canyon Drive. Just want to say that really kudos to Austin for doing all the work he's done on mitigating neighbors' concerns on losing views. I wish more architects were as caring and collaborative as he has been. So he's done a great job. I am only here regarding that parking space. It's ironic, I just took a city survey today. What's it called? The Safe Street Parking Survey or something. And one of the first questions was, When making decisions about road or street design, people's safety should be the top priority. Yes, and I agree with Board Member Thomas that this is a horrific place. I don't know any other hairpin turns that have parking in Laguna Beach or probably any city near us. It's ridiculous. I'm speaking on behalf of probably 4 families that said they'll appeal the project if this goes forward. I do not want Austin's project to be held up because of this choice by Public Works to put it here. It's not needed. As Austin said, there's plenty of parking on Morningside. If it can be somewhere else, that would be really, really appreciated. The tree, I think, would probably be in the same category as the parking space. People are really attached to those large trees, so I don't know as that would be neighborhood supported as well. So I would please consider some way to remove this from the package so that it can go forward without that parking space. So thank you for considering very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Members of the public? Once, twice? Forever hold your peace? All right. Mr. Peters, you have the floor.
I'm not sure if I have much other than add than again, just the parking. It was a real challenge. I wasn't really quite sure how to handle it when we began to, I was aware of the requirement and then walked the street. It was like, well, what do we do here? And also keep in mind that the current parking is I believe an easement within the property. So I'm not exactly sure of it, but I don't know that it's city land. I believe it's actually easement within the property, or a part of it may be within the property. But regardless of the fact, when I first saw the survey, and it's like, how is there, public parking here? But it existed, and I understand the requirement, and so it was. There were really no clear solutions to this, and I'm still not exactly clear what the proper solution would be for the street parking replacement. Thank you.
Wonderful.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Daniel, you said there's only one off-site parking that's required. You're suggesting that these additional 2 spaces are required. Which is it? I mean,
I could.
yeah, explain to me. 'cause
My
I'm
understanding
confused.
is that we were required 2. But keep in mind, there's 3 because the third was for 1270. And so I actually am in communications with the architect for
Okay,
1270.
The city says no. And if those 2 spaces can be eliminated, that is a potential solution. So the question to you, Daniel, and to you, Wendy, what's the requirement?
Well, so I did a little bit of research, and so from my understanding is that back in 1992, there was a resolution that passed that restricted parking along Bluebird Canyon Road or Drive. And in 2012, there were 6 locations throughout Bluebird Canyon that were identified to establish some additional parking, public parking. And so they adopted a resolution to remove the restriction to allow parking in those areas. 3 months later, in July of 2012, Public Works came back with an additional location, which happened to be in front of 1260 Bluebird Canyon. And they identified that they could have 4 parking spaces in that area. And the other areas remained no parking because they wanted to maintain emergency access. So that's why there's 4 spaces there today. With the project being proposed, I understand Austin mentioned that one of those spaces is for 1270. When they develop their property, 1260 now needs to provide 1 on-street parking space. I think their intent was that they didn't want to remove any of the existing parking spaces. They were trying to maintain it. So the thought was they would relocate it. And so when they consulted with Public Works, there were different areas that they agreed upon or that they determined would be feasible. But as we hear tonight, there are concerns with regard to the 2 parking spaces that are on the hairpin turn. I think that perhaps this is something that maybe we need to consider questioning whether the spaces need to be relocated or if they can be removed. And I don't know if that's something that council would need to consider since they adopted a resolution to remove the restriction for no parking. Typically, we're not supportive of losing parking. So I think that's why.
No, I understand that. But real quick, let me just finish. the key question here is whether there's any requirement for this project to have 2 additional parking, off-site parking in addition to the one that's right next to the house. Is there a requirement? Because from my own point of view, it's a dangerous spot to put parking. And I don't think it's fair to the applicant for us to deny his project or even continue this to find another space for those 2 parking spaces if it's not required by the city. If it's not required, it's just something we would like to have. I think that could impact how we deliberate. So again, I asked the question because I'm not sure I'm getting a clear answer. Is there a requirement for this project that there be 3 off-site parking spaces or 1?
There's a code requirement that they provide a minimum of 1 on-street parking space.
Okay, so but what I'm hearing here, and just for the record, and I think it's important for our deliberations when we get to that, the 2 additional off-site parking are not required for this project.
One is though. One
One.
is.
Yeah, the 2
One is.
additional, I said.
Yeah, but
1 is required, not 3.
Correct.
Here's the part I want to bring forward. I've been on the board for a little more seasoned, Debbie as well, and she can probably articulate this as well. In the hearings from my recollection for the project above, and even at that time, the history of this one from 2016 was brought forward. This parking that was placed in front of these 2 sites is a little bit of an anomaly. It's still an element of wrong, an element of right. But at those hearings for that project above, we had 30, 40 people come in here to bark at us for we're keeping the parking, right? So the applicant comes forward in his first hearing and he sees this history and it was applied to this site and the site above to keep parking. Okay, so now the neighbors know parking is going to be resolved and it's going to be in kind somewhere. And for me, it's a hard element to swallow here in this 3rd hearing for this one, because the folks that were all up in arms about losing parking in this area is being accommodated by the applicant and being, proposed as kind of for benefit of the community in conjunction with in conjunction with the project. But we're now in this late hour. Those folks that have all said this project's good because it meets those other things, now to take away that project parking when it's being proposed is a tough pill to swallow, because the public's now not notified that parking might be disappearing.
Are we in deliberations? Because I'd like.
I mean, right now we're just kind of having a discussion.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say, like,
Well,
but from a historical component, people came up in arms about the parking being lost.
No, I understand.
And to your comment on the tree, that eucalyptus, there were lots of people to say that eucalyptus had to.
No,
be
they're not you. I have some photos.
And how much the beauty was that. And those are cherished components of the community. And those are things for us to consider. And I believe the applicant really is making the best case effort to really solve these issues and be proactive. It's hard that.
So this feels beyond our scope right now. It's like, where would we be directed by zoning, planning, legal? That is the responsibility. Is there a way to get a variance? Is there a way to do something where
Does
the,
it require a variance?
yeah, that what would it, I know, but to get rid of this parking space?
So
Well,
there are 4 parking spaces that are in front of this house currently.
Right,
When this house gets built, they have to put back one of them.
right.
Yeah.
Right, but they can't according to what the neighborhood wants with the tree and the hairpin turn. So how do we address that?
As I see it, there are 2 big picture options, which one would be to allow the parking to go as proposed and include a condition of approval that requires, I think there is one that prior to the commencement of any construction within the public right-of-way, the property owner shall obtain approval of a final street improvement plan by the Department of Public Works. We could add on to that to say, to assess the safety and location of the public parking spaces. The other alternative big picture option would be to merely require the 1 up on street parking spot.
On your first option, is the option that there be a location found in working with Public Works that we do, or is it this location?
It would be this location and then having Public Works confirm that it is safe.
Okay, just so the facts are correct, and I have photos, they're not eucalyptus trees, at least not ones that. No, I know, but these, let me show the board and I can make these part of the record. These are the two, there's a tree on each side, that's that. I'll show you. There's one of these on each side and that what creates the blind spot.
Right.
So trim the trees.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about.
They have to get rid of it.
No, they could just trim
Yeah,
it.
well, so
They
this
can-
is,
they can
it,
lace the
trim
tree.
it.
no, I know.
You
These
have
are-
to slow down so much to make that turn
They're-
anyway.
they're
Come on.
inching along.
I'll make it clear.
Mhm.
These are the,
Yeah.
this is the tree and there's one on the other side that block the view.
Right.
So this makes it unsafe, these two trees.
They're relocating that in this. proposal.
And then I would just like to,
Relocating Both trees?
Yes.
Tom, you have to be on the microphone when you speak.
Oh, well, maybe, let me ask the applicant then. Can you pull up the parking plan and show me, exactly what's going to happen with respect to the trees that are blocking the view to those parking spaces? Because I looked at that and I may have missed it. And I think it'd be good for the public to know as well.
Hold on, the city attorney would like to speak.
yes, thank you. I think just for purposes of the record and the photos that you were showing to the board, I just want to make those available to the public if they're interested and offer the public the chance to comment on those photos as well, since that's an additional fact that's being offered.
I showed one photo and I will send it. Who can I send it to? To you.
And Jane, may I have you reread that potential condition of approval, the first one you mentioned?
Yeah, so currently there's a project-specific special condition attached to the resolution that states, prior to the commencement of any construction within the public right-of-way, the property owner shall obtain approval of a final street improvement plan by the Department of Public Works. I suggest adding to assess the safety and location of the proposed public parking spaces.
But would if we get to a condition of approval, can they still move forward on building the house and starting that process?
They could move forward and.
As
yeah,
the city determines all the things they need to determine? Okay.
Exactly.
What is the item? It's.
Do you have any comments? I mean, it's kind of an open conversation about parking.
Just 2 points to add. The first on the subject property. The subject property was designed, I recall hearing a 13 feet garage setback for another project at some point. So this garage was set back 13 feet. The idea is that all of the users for the subject property would be able to park on site. I believe there's 3, plus you could probably get 4 or even 5, in the driveway. So that was on purpose, right? So that the thinking is the property wouldn't need the offsite, and it was designed specifically for that. In fact, the previous scheme, the garage was pushed out quite a bit further for that reason. The problem is it created a lot of bulk, and so we pushed it back. But that's point number one. Point number two, I'm aware of one tree, and I may be missing it, and you can see it on the plan to the west of the parking. Sorry, at the bend. Yeah. So that tree right there. Yeah, the thinking is that could be, if it's a visual obstruction, it could be replaced at a close close location, but a location that doesn't cause a visual obstruction. I'm not aware of any other trees, although some of the shrubs may get pretty high, which also may be an obstruction.
The city property and should be city maintained, and the view corridor
And-
should be maintained and
And
cleaned
then
up by the city.
The one other comment, it might be possible to extend the one by the subject property further to the eucalyptus tree. Across the street, the engineering, the improvement to Bluebird Canyon across the street, a similar thing could be done there so that the parking adjacent to the property, instead of the 2, it could be 3, and that potentially could be extended. That then, of course, would need to be evaluated by Public Works, and also its proximity to the tree, and the tree roots is another issue with that. So those are some.
I have a question. Again, I see it says replace live oak. And that's the one that's uphill from the proposed parking spaces at the turn.
Right.
There's another oak that's on the other side of that parking area. So I have two questions. Who requested, was that Public Works that requested that you replace that oak? Do you remember?
No, it was not. That was purely in response to creating some kind of a view to address the view of the parking or to address the safety and creating making those parking spaces more visible. That's the
Okay.
reason for it.
And
Yeah.
by replace, what do you mean?
Probably a better term would have been relocate. It's basically just move it to a different spot. That's the idea. Maybe just up the street, so it's in a similar location, but at a spot that doesn't create a visual impairment to the parking spot. That was the idea.
Okay, Jane, there's another oak on the other side. I saw it on both sides. Can we legally condition, assuming we do approve, we haven't gotten to deliberation. I'm just asking, can we legally condition approval on the removal of both of those oaks?
So whose property are those? oaks?
I have no idea.
It's the city's property. No,
Okay. So
What's that?
no. I mean, it's the city's property.
So I think that by including a condition of approval that gives the Department of Public Works the opportunity to ensure safety, if there's an issue with a tree that needs to be removed to ensure safety, they can take the appropriate procedure through the city if it's on city property to remove the tree.
Which is outside of the scope of this application and this project site.
Just so it's clear, Louis,
Yeah, no, I get you.
I see a serious safety problem here.
Right.
I would
so we're
not-
gonna do a Public Works to ensure the safety. of
Yeah,
Public
but
Works.
I would
They
not
have it.
approve this project if I knew those two oaks are going to stay where they stayed. So that's why I'm asking this question.
I understand, but it would be under the assumption that that would be Public Works' job and evaluation, not only just for this project, but on a
All over
daily
the town.
basis for our public streets, for maintaining our view corridors, which is a problem. And frankly, code enforcement or whatever issue outside of the purview of the board.
Yeah.
Correct, but in your same assessment, we do have the authority, correct, access, which parking is part of this, and off-site access, we do have the availability too. It's just running into a weird space of
No, and.
who's
I-
responsible.
No, I totally, one is, we are obligated to consider safety when we're talking about projects like this. That's number
Right,
one.
but the safety factor that
me-
you're
let me finish.
considering, yes, go
No,
ahead.
let me finish. I understand that. The second is, I'm not questioning whether Public Works can do this. In fact, when we get to deliberations, you'll hear I probably agree with that. Nonetheless, if we see a safety issue, I think it's a fair question if we can condition removal of the safety issue. And it created a new issue, which is why I asked legally, can we create a condition that will require the city to do something to satisfy the condition? That was simply a question as to whether we have that authority. I know you feel, Mr. Wild, that we do not have that authority, but I wanted to hear that from the city attorney.
I, at this time, do not know specifically legally where those trees are located, whose property. I'm hearing that it's on city property. But again, it's going to be through the Public Works Department anyways to process any such application to remove trees. So they are in a better position than I am to evaluate whether those trees should and can be removed.
But to
Right.
expand
And
on
how.
that, can I just expand on that? So I think to Tom's point, can we make it a condition? Are we allowed to condition the city
We
on
can,
something? I wouldn't think so.
No.
No.
So we can only condition, and we can put this in as a condition that if these trees are designated to be the homeowner's land, that they would have to be responsible for removal of them. We could perhaps do something like that, but I don't know if we can mandate the city. Yeah, we definitely can.
We can't.
No. Okay, let's wrap this up. Public hearing is now closed. Board comments.
Let me kind of make my position clear, because I was asking questions. I wasn't stating my position. My biggest concern is the safety. As presently situated, it's an unsafe thing. I could not approve it. as presently situated. I think I'm satisfied if we condition this on, and we're keeping these parking, because I think the parking's important there, on Public Works reviewing and approving this for safety. If that's a condition we can do, I can support the project. I cannot support the project otherwise.
Okay. Mrs. Coveney?
So I'm not sure where I am right now, so I need to make all my
Liberation.
comments about everything. Okay, so I can definitely support the project. I thank you for making the accommodations to the lighting, the landscaping, the materials to make it more organic, the size, the design articulation, the design integrity, the view equity, privacy, all the design criteria feel like they've been met for a challenging little nugget in this hillside. I would also echo that we need to address the safety issue. Obviously, safety is one of our top concerns. I think this has to be looked at more deeply by the city, but I'm prepared to get behind your project, and I want to thank you again.
Mrs.
Yes, I know that we threw a lot at you at the last hearing, and I think that you've come through magnificently. Thank you also for flipping the pool. I think it's a really great project, and you addressed all of our concerns, and I think it's a much better project out of it. I think that because in the past, in that area, parking is a very serious concern to a lot of your neighbors, and I would do nothing to eliminate the parking. And I think that Public Works is fully capable to review the safety aspects of this project, and I can support it as is.
Thank you, Mrs. Neve. Mr. Weil?
Yeah, Austin, great job. Like hands down, please do more work in Laguna Beach. Seriously, like a lot of stuff at you. This is a complicated site. It's a complicated neighborhood. You did a great job tucking and molding and really listening to the neighbors, listening to the board's direction, most importantly. And you got a really good fit on the overall project. It not only looks great, the design integrity is fantastic. It blends into this kind of natural rustic area of Bluebird Canyon. And it's a super important spot because it really is where the canyon starts to meet the homes. And I think this will be a, really significant, beautiful home for people to enjoy and kind of hide into the hillside. And that's what you're trying to achieve. The last little modifications were the perfect tweaks. The view equity is very fair and balanced. It's tucked into the hill. Those last little bits, the pool readjusting, the lighting coming down, you really took that to consideration. And I think that was much needed and exaggerated at the last hearing. So all the things with the site, I'm good with. I do share the same sentiment with Board Member Neve. It was a big issue in the past of trying to keep those parking spaces. And I really applaud the applicant for trying to be supportive to make that happen in its whole, the benefit to the public of those spaces. I also think it's part of the coastal development criteria of not removing parking spaces in those zones and really being mindful of. So in the proposed location, I'm okay with it and I can be supportive of it. I do think put another stamp to Public Works to just double check their own property for the city and do it properly. And if there's an alternative location that's acceptable to the applicant, I'd like to afford them that availability without having to come back to design review if that meets that requirement. It may have to, but I don't want to hold up your project. You got it into the sweet spot. And if there are some tweaks that are comparable that can be made that work that out, I'd like to see you do it, but it works for me in this component. And if there's views and tree corner line of sight, city, get your maintenance crews out there with some saws.
Chair, Chair, can I?
And no,
give
no,
comments?
no, you've done commenting and I can support, we're moving on. I can support Board Member Weil's comments and I can approve this project. Great job listening to the board. I know last time we were trying to figure out which direction to put the program and came to a solution and thank you. Thanks for reaching out to the public and being proactive there. So yeah, I can support this project this evening. I support staff's findings. I believe view equity has been achieved and access or parking, we'll just kick the can down to Public Works. So, yeah.
And I'd just like to remind the board that there is a revised resolution in the agenda packet that has been posted. And just based on hearing the deliberations, you could move to adopt the revised resolution with the revised condition of approval. Noted as the project-specific special conditions number 1 to read as follows. Prior to the commencement of any construction within the public right-of-way, the property owner shall obtain approval of a final street improvement plan by the Department of Public Works to assess the safety and location of the public parking spaces.
Keep that page up. I'm just gonna say, you read your line and I'm gonna add that.
Yeah, Mr. Weil, can you do the motion since you're closest to the
Okay.
attorney?
Item number 5.2 in the later section, since we called it back, project location 1260 Bluebird Canyon Drive. The board, the move to approve the project, hold on, it's all written differently than I'm used to, so for a second. To adopt resolution number 23-0984, approving DR 23-0984 for a single-family residence and associated site improvements subject to the attached exhibits A, B, and C, and adopt a section 15303 categorical exemption pursuant to CEQA and the Environmental Quality Act, that the project meets the design review criteria and the findings for the board, and that the additional parking improvements be subject to, that's your cue.
The condition of approval read in to the record by the deputy city attorney.
That little line will be part of my motion. I like the shorter version of that. Thank you. That's my motion.
And to clarify lastly, that it's the revised resolution in the packet.
And since they made more changes, the revised resolution.
I'll second this.
Special condition number 1.
I'll second that.
All right, we got a motion and seconded by Board Member Neve.
Board Member Coveney,
Yes.
Board Member Gibbs,
Yes.
Board Member Weil,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Neve,
Yes.
and Chair Gannon.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. Austin Powers.
Warren and the dog makes a revisit.
I forgot my doggy treats.
The request of the chair.
Yes. We haven't seen him in a while.
I know. Maybe she'll do her acts.
Emotional support animal for all the board
For
members.
everyone.
So up next, we have 5.6 located at 1445 Bluebird Canyon Drive. This is, yes,
It's not your turn. It's not.
you're
your
out of order.
turn.
This is for design review 24-0769.
Okay.
Okay, variance request 24-0770. Mr. Wank. Oh, we need ex parte. Board ex parte.
Yes, I visited the site and I spoke with Warren.
I visited the site and spoke with Warren.
As did I.
Same.
Same here. All right, Mr. Wank.
Thank you. Item 5.6 is a request for design review at 1445 Bluebird Canyon Drive, located in the R1 zone. The site is currently developed with a single-family dwelling and attached two-car garage. The applicant proposes legalizing an existing 500 square foot deck, raising the existing deck 1 foot 8 inches, and installing a trellis at the front of the property. A variance is requested for the deck and trellis within the required front and side setbacks. The improvements will allow the applicant to maintain the existing deck on the property, which is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. Staff recommends that the board adopt resolution 24-0769, approving design review 24-0769 and variance 24-0770 for a deck and trellis within the required front and side yard setbacks and finding said exempt from CEQA. That will conclude my staff summary, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wank. Board, do you have any questions for staff? Okay. The public hearing is declared open. 5 minutes.
Well, I'm not going to say much. I think you all understand this project. In a nutshell, a variance was granted years ago for the garage in that same location for the same reason that I'm citing justifications, which is lot size, location, topography, uh, uh, neighborhood compatibility. They're all up and down the street. There's no neighbor opposition whatsoever, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, any member of the public wish to speak on this project? No? All right.
Sadie,
Would your
do you have
public,
anything
Sadie,
to
like
say?
to speak?
She had her moment.
She had, yeah, she already said her piece,
Yeah,
so
she
we're
said-
done. Thank you.
Yeah. We missed her for the Pledge of Allegiance.
She was we were outside.
Okay. Board, do you have questions of the applicant?
No.
No.
All right. The meeting is closed. We can come into board comments.
I'll go first. This is a modest change, and I think, as you stated, it meets design review criteria, specifically the ones that would be most affected. Privacy, no problem. View equity, no problem. Neighbor compatible, and keeps design integrity of the neighborhood. And I think it's very modest and meets the requirements, and I can get behind the project.
She liked that.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbs, you're up.
Excuse me, very simple project. I think the fact that the variance was granted for the garage, the intensity of use of the variance is minor in that it just allows a deck. It's not a further increase or encroachment into the front yard setback. I find it neighborhood compatible. Are you disagreeing with me already?
No, seems like you're right.
Oh.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
I checked for, I think Warren, you showed me some other decks and I drove around and sure enough, the deck size and location is neighborhood compatible. It does not impact any views or privacy. We walked a deck that was clear. Overall, I think it's a, totally acceptable project and improves the residents.
Eve?
Yes, yes, and I agree with my colleagues. I think this is absolutely neighborhood compatible. I think the variance can absolutely be justified. Again, size, location, and also a right enjoyed by others in the neighborhood, and very, very minor, addition. I can support your project and the variance.
Yeah, support my colleagues as well. It's very consistent within the neighborhood as the neighboring houses up and down the street all have very similar configurations. And to Board Member Neve's point, it's a right enjoyed by others and one that should remain with this site. So I'm supportive of the modest upgrade.
And once again, I can say ditto for Board Member Wiles' comments, and the rest of the board. I support all your comments, and I support staff's recommendation for approval and your findings for the design review guidelines.
Chair, on that note, I'll move item number 5.6 at project location 1445 Bluebird Canyon Drive. Adopt resolution 24-0769 approving DR review 24-0769 and variance 24-0770 for a deck and trellis within the required front and side yard setback, and finding said action exempt from CEQA under section 15301.
And if I may, sorry to interrupt, but I would just like to make one addition to that motion as well, that under design review finding number 1 for view equity, that it read that the board does not have view equity concerns regarding the project, as the improvements are located in a manner that would not significantly impact views for neighbors. Therefore, this criterion has been met. And this is for the same reasons as before. This is just to memorialize that the board as a body is making the finding as opposed to staff and individual board member comments.
I think that's a good addition.
Can we just amend or add it to the motion?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Or you could
You don't like-
simply
I mean, we could
accept
debate.
my modification.
The point of the board hearing is for us to deliberate and for us to make the motion. It's not for the city attorney to dictate our motions. If they don't like it, they can correct it after the fact. I'm struggling with the.
Let me give you why I think it's a good addition. number one,
Okay,
Just
no,
make
we're
the
we're
motion.
making, we're making
Just
a
make the
motion.
motion,
Just make a
Tom.
motion.
So I'll leave my motion on the floor as proposed.
Great, I'll second that.
And then you can amend it if you like.
well, I'll amend it to, I request that the motion be amended to include what what the city attorney recommended. And let me explain the reason.
Explain the reason. You said what you said. It's good. It's done. It's acceptable.
And you have to
And
second
so
the
there's
second thing.
I second.
And I
that.
second that.
Sure, we should be able to state a reason.
Yeah. I don't-
Board Member Coveney,
Yes.
Board Member Gibbs,
Yes.
Board Member Weil,
Abstain.
Chair Pro Tem Neve,
Yes.
and Chair Gannon.
Yes,
Motion passes 4-0.
thank you. Next up is 5.7.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Warren.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sadie.
Sadie. Okay,
Sorry.
4-0. Doesn't have a vote.
Oh, he just, okay.
okay. So moving on, 5.7, located at 31526 at Valito Road. This is for design review 24-0658 with the coastal development permit 24-0657. Do we have the applicant team? Yeah. Board ex parte?
I went to the site, walked it twice, met with Steve Kawaratani, and also left a message for architect, but never was reached.
I went to the site, met with Steve Cartani. I also met with Sophia and Jeff Chamberlain, and I met with Diana and Stan Lehman.
And I just want to add to mine that I also met with several of the neighbors. Do I need to name them specifically? Hold on, there's a lot of them. Oh, heck, where did my notes go? Oh, here we go. The homeowners at 31538 West Street, the Boshnaks at 31532 West Street, it was the White House, I don't know who owns that, and then 31532 Valito Street.
And I can read, I'd like to, while we're here, I was on the site visits with Ms. Coveney.
And Jeff Chamberlain. Dang. The Lemons.
Lehman's. Yes, I had a site visit and met with the Chamberlains, met with Mr. and Mrs. Lehman, and the Boshnaks and Steve Kawaratani. And also, Mr. Kawaratani let me into two other neighbors' homes and we walked around the property.
Spoke with Steve Cortani and the applicant team over the phone, walked the site, and I spoke with, I'm sorry, I forgot to write it down. Diane Lehman, yes. I spoke with her on the phone, and then I kind of trespassed through a few different sites.
Okay, great. Mr. Wank?
Thank you. Item 5.7 is a request for a design review and a coastal development permit at 31526 Valito Road, located in the R1 zone. The site is currently developed with a single-family dwelling and attached two-car garage. Design review is required for a new single-family residence, elevated decks, grading, landscaping, tandem parking, and a third covered parking space. The applicant is proposing to demolish an existing 1,278 square foot single-family residence, construct a new 4,002 square foot single-family residence with 461 square feet of elevated decks, grading, landscaping, tandem parking, and a third covered parking space. Staff has received neighbor concerns regarding the size of the structure, neighborhood compatibility, privacy, and view equity. The board should consider whether these impacts affect the project's ability to meet the design review criteria. That will conclude my staff summary, and I'm available for any questions.
Board, do you have questions of staff? All right, the public hearing is now open.
Hello,
Yeah,
Commissioners and Chair Gannon. My name is Adele Chang. I'm with LCRA Architects, the architect for the project. My office is up in Pasadena, and our client lives in San Marino, right next door. And they had hoped that this would be a summer home for their family to escape the heat up in the San Gabriel Valley. And they love this lot, and it is a flag lot surrounded by 5 houses. And all of those houses are 2-story homes of a variety of styles. They're, a mix of styles. So the client wanted a more contemporary looking home, and that's what we designed for them. And we also designed a house that would fit kind of her family's needs. And this is our first project in Laguna Beach, so I'm here to learn. We did contact the neighbors and held a neighbor meeting. I've had a Zoom meeting with the Chamberlains and their architect, as well as having met them on the site. We have been in conversation with the owner of the easement, the access easement, to make sure we understand what he wants and doesn't want on that access driveway, because the land belongs to him. And I've been in email conversation, had exchanged a few emails with the owners of 131538. So I've heard a number of neighbor concerns, and I'm here to also listen to any comments and input that you have. And after hearing the neighbors' comments, we have some thoughts and ideas on how to address them, including rotating the home, making the second floor more compact to allow for views from the upper neighbor. And I think the rotation of the home will provide more privacy for the downhill neighbors. But I do want to mention that the current house, and if you were to stand in the backyard of the current house, which is pretty run down, by the way, already looks into the backyard of 31532. There's really no avoiding it because it's downhill. And the other uphill neighbors can also look into their backyard. That was brought up as a concern, but I just wanted to make that point. Otherwise, I'm here to answer questions and listen to your comments. Oh, one thing I did want to bring up is that in an effort to create something that is lower, we are proposing to grade the site down. It varies depending on where you are on the site, from around 8 feet close to the uphill side down to meet the grade at the lowest point of the site. Not the entire site, but the lowest point of the pad. And also so by doing that, we are lowering, and I heard that from staff that there was some question about the staking, the story post. And that's because it's based on the final elevation, and the ground plane would be several feet below because we're ramping down or sloping down further into the site, just so that we're tucked in more. And maybe one last thing is that we are not asking for any variances. We worked with staff extensively, and Garrett can verify that. At one time, we were having weekly Zoom meetings with him. And so we did not want to deviate from the zoning ordinance. Was that the beep to stop?
Yes.
Okay,
Was that
I
or
made it.
30 seconds? You have 30 seconds.
That's it. That's all I have to say. I tried to be quick.
Okay, so then we are moving on to public commentary. Any member from the public wish to speak on this project? Mr. Koratani?
Ms. Gannon, can you cue me up, please, Garrett? My name is Steve Kawaratani, and I do represent 3 adjacent neighbors. Before I start with my comments, welcome to Laguna, Adele. You'll certainly learn a lot tonight. The existing home is 1,276 square feet, and the neighborhood average is 2,283 square feet. This project is being proposed at 4,002. We believe that it's too large. However, as the architect stated, it's going to be a two-story home. It would be unfair otherwise. I believe that if the architect would consider reducing the house to less than 3,600 square feet, we would lose that tandem parking condition, and that area could be used for program. Maintaining the existing site orientation, as the architect stated, and adding the second story and the considerable glazing and deck is problematic to both my clients. I believe that the project does need to be rotated. The project lowered, I heard some good things that Adele mentioned, and even pulled back from the rear would be very helpful. And of course, redesigning the decks and the glazing, and perhaps even taller hedging, as Tom and Debbie brought up. If the hedge was allowed to go up, that would probably provide more ample protection. Next slide, please. So that is the view impact from the Bernardi residence, and I'm glad Adele's here to see how it's towering over their project. Next slide, please. And this is the project directly behind. Currently, as designed, the house will have a great view into my client's master bedroom. So we're going to have to reorient the house. I think that'd be very helpful, very encouraged by what the project architect has said. And in closing, Adele, Dave Whitaker, who lives at 31532, has said he's willing to listen to you to perhaps lower the driveway, which would help with your grading. Thank you very much, Board.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? Is it Lehman? Lehman? Yes, Lehman. I love.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to make me feel better, because I have lived I'm starting to speak tonight about our house at 31521 Totoloma Lane. Our view equity will be taken away by the current plans for the new build at 31526 Valito Road. As you can see by the photos that I have previously sent you and on the visit to our home, that these views will be blocked anywhere between 50% to 100%, depending upon where you are on our property. Please consider that we've had these views for 34 years and moved to Laguna because we love it, because of the neighborhood, and because of the view. And I also would like to mention our privacy too, because of the height of the house. Their lights will be shining directly into our bedroom, and they will also be able to see us. So thank you so much, and for all the work that you've done.
Thank you, Mrs. Lehman. Lehman. Next speaker, Mr. Chamberlain, right?
Yes. Thanks for the time. I'm just going to reread some of the stuff that I've already sent to you, and I'll be as quick as I can.
Sorry.
My name is Jeff Chamberlain, and I live at 31551 Totoloma with my wife and Sophie and our 2 kids. We are directly next door to the proposed new home at 31526 Valito Road. While we welcome our new neighbors to the neighborhood, we would also like to express the following concerns with their current plans that don't yet seem to meet the criteria of design review guidelines. Some of them we've covered in our original letter to you, and others in our personal meetings at our house. Thanks for coming by yesterday, by the way. But I'd like to repeat them here so they are put on record. 1, overall, the height partially blocks portions of our view from several locations. Their covered upper floor master bedroom deck particularly blocks our view from multiple points of our house, including the living room, den, and bedrooms. This roof over the upper deck seems unnecessary and could easily be removed without any change to the overall design. 2, the house has not been staked properly. They currently outline only the upper floor, and their plans show that the first floor extends even closer to our house. Without proper and complete staking, it's impossible to understand the true impact of the design's mass and scale. 3, there is a lack of design articulation to the project overall. For example, there is one consistent roof parapet elevation all around the whole house. They seem to have filled the buildable envelope with the house rather than plan and accommodate views over the house. 4, the overall massing of the house seems inconsistent with our understanding of the design review guidelines, in particular neighborhood compatibility. Rather than feeling like a well-articulated single-family home, it appears similar to a multifamily apartment block. There is simply nothing like this in the immediate surroundings. 5, there are 2 windows facing our home, which will impact our privacy due to their location and proximity to our house and outdoor living areas. These windows are for the downstairs bathroom and the upstairs walk-in closet. Both are close to and immediately opposite our living room windows, our kids' bedroom windows, and our main outdoor living area. Our home will be impacted by the adjacency of these spaces. Bathrooms and dressing areas are intimate places of a home, and I'm sure that discretion with those areas would serve us both well. 6, the plans do not indicate where the air conditioning condensers will be located. We would like for them to not be close to our property, particularly our main outdoor living area, living room, and children's bedrooms. 7, landscaping is an important tool in good neighbor design. We don't think they've adequately addressed that yet in terms of side yard screening. Overall, we're looking forward to meeting our new neighbors. I know it might not sound like it, but we are. But we asked Design Review Board to take into consideration our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anders, you've been sitting back there a long time. You're not going to speak? All right. I love it. Yes, he's representing Mr. Chamberlain. And then Mrs. Jung, did you have something you wanted to say earlier? No? Okay, anyone else from the public like to speak on this project? All right, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
I'll address the last comments first. Regarding the staking, we realized that when Anders actually pointed that out to us. And I think, and I went to the site and I measured. So if story posts were up, they would be 2 feet to 30 inches above current grade, because that's how far we have dug down, especially on that side of the property. So anyway, it would be below the height of their railing, of their rear deck, of the Chamberlain's rear deck. And in terms of the windows that face their property, we're very happy to turn those into frosted glass, obscure glass windows. One is, or maybe move the bathroom window. We just didn't want to have a blank wall. Then the building would feel not articulated. In fact, the building has a lot of ins and outs. If the Whitakers are willing to allow us to grade down our driveway approach slightly, then we would be able to start to have variations in parapet heights. We would be able to start to do that. And I'm so happy to hear that he's willing to talk, because he wasn't willing to allow us to do anything on the easement originally, besides to put up a 6-inch curb to keep the driveway clean from the dirt from the planting areas. That was all we were allowed to do. So I'm glad he's willing to listen to that. That may allow us to push the building down a little bit more. And in terms of AC, I already talked with Garrett about where we propose to put them, and in the next round, we'll go ahead and locate them. In terms of house size, we are the largest property in the area, and we are within what's allowable in the code. And Garrett told me that he would do a verification of neighboring sizes. So that would help us decide what to do. And am I forgetting? View equity, yes, we do plan on shrinking the second floor.
Right.
And adding frosted glass windows wherever we think is going to impact anyone's privacy.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing.
Yes.
A hedge was planted last year, and I think it needs to be allowed to grow. That will also help.
Okay, can you identify that plant?
The hedge, I believe, your slide.
Is it in the plans?
The photos this gentleman took also showed the beginning of that hedge.
Okay. Oh, yes, I recall.
Yeah, it should be allowed to grow. Once it does, I think it will also help the privacy issue.
Great. So, board, any questions for the applicant? No questions? All right, so that officially closes out the public communication. Comments, Mr. Gibbs, would you like to lead off?
Sure. First of all, I appreciate your comments tonight because you're putting a house in between 5 homes that are all closely impacted by your project. And this kind of goes to early neighbor communications. Doing a lot of this thing to accommodate them and your willingness to do that is really important to Laguna Beach. I know you're new here, but it's really important to DRB, it's design review. It's really important to the neighbors. And the fact that you're willing to do that gives me a lot of confidence that the next round is going to be supported by neighbors rather than opposed. And I think you understand the concerns and from what I've heard. But let me go through my thoughts on the concerns. First, staking is really important. And it's important to lay out the staking so that it matches the footprint of the building, both the first floor, second floor, for view impacts and also privacy concerns. So they can match up the 3D modeling that you've done to the staking, so they can see where the windows are going to be, where the decks are going to be. Second, the mass and scale. I would need to be convinced that well, first of all, I think you're entitled to a 2nd-story home. The square footage, I need to see more data. It's not really, I think it's beyond the scope of this one, but it could be very important in the next one. So it'd be important to potentially work with Mr. Karatani about square footages and see, you don't have to agree with him, but just to get an idea of what the data that we will look at in the next round. Again, I don't have a problem with the 2nd story for this project. It's certainly neighborhood compatible. With respect to privacy, the fact that you're willing to reorient the building to go out toward the canyon and toward in fact, I think you'll have a better ocean view that way and better canyon view that way is important. At the same time, keep in mind that anytime you put a 2nd story in, particularly where it's been a 1-story and you're looking into people's backyards, it's important to think in terms of orientation to minimize. There's going to be some impacts, neighbors. You're going to have some impacts with respect to, privacy issues, but the extent you can minimize them in your design, which it sounds like you're willing to do. And I think it's in everybody's interest to lower this building. And so whoever owns that easement needs to be more, not needs to, if the neighbors collectively could get that person to be more cooperative, and it doesn't sound like he has been he doesn't have to be, there's no legal requirement. But that would solve a lot of people's problems and concerns both up and down from your project. So it sounds to me like private, and particularly the fact that you're going to make windows opaque that look into people's property, that's important too. Also, window location. And I think, in working with the neighbors and when you are able to get your building kind of reoriented, I think you can solve all of those with these neighbors. I think their neighbors sounded to me to be pretty reasonable. Also, in connection with privacy, landscaping could be a useful tool. And I think in the next round, focus more on landscaping. Let's see if we can get this project approved the next round. Articulation is my last comment. I think it does look like a duplex in some aspects, or multifamily. I think a little bit more articulation. I think you can have that with respect to when you do some shrinkage at the 2nd story to make it, and use of articulation within the elevations, particularly elevations facing the neighbors in the front and the back. I think it could use a little bit more. I think it's it's a pretty attractive modern building. But I think, the tools to make it a little bit more attractive, because again, they're going to be looking at it. Those are my comments.
Great. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Gibbs. Mrs.
May
Cutter.
I go, board? Thank
You
you,
have the
Chair.
floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for being here. I had many ditto the notes here that Tom just gave. As far as the size of the building on this lot, I believe it's a 14,000 plus square foot lot. Now, I know that must be the slope down and some of it's not completely buildable, but when you look at it overlaid with the old building, it doesn't feel like you're expanding that much over. But it would be great as we all work together here in order to alleviate some of the neighbors' concerns and still provide what's required for the homeowner, if you can scale that down a bit. The couple things I noticed on the plan, specifically your renders here, let's see, the left elevation here, which I believe faces the 31538 West Street quite a bit. You have a bedroom off of an existing, a deck off an existing bedroom. That deck is viewable. I got my east and souths and norths kind of confused on this sort of flag
Yeah,
lot.
'cause
So
it's at an angle.
yeah, so basically I feel like it's a suggestion you do what your next steps are, but it feels a little excessive from a privacy perspective. If that could be a Juliet deck, or if it could just become part of the program of the house, it's obviously would give you more square footage and would be enhancing that space, and it would provide privacy to the neighbors. Also, the large wraparound deck. I mean, the majority of it wraps on the canyon side, which is awesome. The portion that if you're choosing to rearticulate, seems like that would really relieve some of the privacy issues there for that wraparound deck that faces the
More or less north.
right. Okay. Thank you.
More or less.
And then the one area, the side of that would kind of look over at the West Street homes, if there was a way to trellis that or something to make it not so straight in to that. Rather than have to reduce the deck in any way, it feels like if you can just keep your L but block that one side might be a good option there. The other Juliet deck off the other bedroom doesn't seem it's an imposition, especially when you allow some of these hedgings to grow. You have a corner window in one of the rooms. As long as that's not creating again, the hedging, I think, might protect the other home from that being a privacy issue. But that was something I noticed as well. Overall mass and scale, if I'm hoping, again, to Tom's point, that the neighbor will work for the neighborhood. I mean, something's going to be built here. This is part of the empty lot syndrome, right? Even though there's an old home there, it's basically been an empty lot forever. So when you try to drop something in it, it's overwhelming to the neighborhood. All of a sudden, it just becomes this thing. So dropping it down a little bit would relieve the mass and scale. I think your articulation's okay, in my opinion. Fixing the windows to glare and put them, glaze them, or I can't think of the term when you fog it so the bathroom doesn't see out. The light isn't quite as strong on that one side. The overall materials on the house, I don't think we're really allowed to comment, but a suggestion that you would if you would like to consider is when you do something in a white as opposed to more of an earth tone, if you use more textural materials, it doesn't feel so antiseptic and big. If you can look at considering new materials on that, I think Mr. Chamberlain's home might have some good colors that kind of warm it into the environment organically. Because white, sort of like jeans, you prefer black ones because you look thinner. White ones, anything white just feels larger. That I think is enough to kind of get you going. But overall, I think is a really good first step. I didn't really look at landscaping. I will tell you that will be a big thing the next round. Height, maintenance, privacy, that's going to become a big deal. And I'll look at that much more thoroughly next round, as well as lighting. People love to light these white things up. Watch that. you just need enough to let people get in the door and walk around, but it can't become Hollywood Hills. So you have to be really careful on how much lighting you add to that. And that's all my little suggestions. Thank you.
So that
Thank you,
tells
Mrs.
me I
Coveney.
need to
Well-
bring the landscape architect here next
Yeah.
time. Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Mrs. Neve?
Yes. Well, I think you guys hit on many of the same issues that I had. And not only, well, first of all, I think your comment about rotating and moving closer to that canyon is going to make a big difference, I think, because you're so impacting, that side, the West Street side. And then, and really looming from Mr. Koratani's presentation, really looming over the one neighbor. So I think because that wraparound deck, consider, I do believe considering reducing your program overall is something that you should really consider. And I think there are a lot of places that you can, because even though the livable area is 4,000 square feet, with your storage and your garage, you're over 5,000 square feet. So that's a lot of program. And one trigger is, you have like 48% impervious surfaces, which is under, 50% is kind of the guideline, but you have a 14,000 square foot lot. So that's a lot of program on that lot. So if you're considering rotating it, and I think that'll move a lot of that looming wraparound deck away and pulling that program in, that will help a lot. And I think not only that, my colleague picked up on that, the deck that's between bathroom 2 and bathroom 3, but there's also another balcony that's, I think, off of bedroom 3. So even if you rotate, I think that those two balcony deck areas will still become a privacy issue. We've talked a little bit about the hedge. Normally on your side setback and your backs, your side and your rear, you're limited to 6 feet technically, like for fencing and things like that. So I think when you do your detailed landscape plan, be sure that you notate the heights of those hedges or trees, and adding landscape can go a long way to help with the privacy issues. And so I think that as you work that into your plans, that can help a lot and go a long way toward some privacy concerns. So take a hard look at that. And then lighting was mentioned, frosting of the windows was mentioned. I think, your plate heights are not excessive. They're 9 feet plate heights. So I think, if you can work with your neighbor, even though you have like 1,800 cubic yards of export already, I think that because there's view issues, view equity issues, I think that if you can work with them and maybe pull it again closer to the canyon and kind of away, take a look. Please go into the Lehman's house. They have just some peekaboo views, and I think so it's very, very critical as far as, I appreciate the flat roof because it could be worse, but I think that if you can lower it more and maybe look at some of the articulation, that would help a lot. So I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Neve. Mr.
Lots
Weil?
of comments. And I want to take a moment and appreciate our conversation, and that this is a starting point for you guys, and you wanted to come get feedback from the community and from the board. So I think that's the right approach for where we're at today. And I appreciate the willingness to, take this further and really reach out to the neighbors, as I think you have over the last couple of weeks. It might have been a little eye-opening, but I think there's a lot of positives that can come from this and really yield a really positive project for this. With that said, where we're starting with the access component, I really think you need to look at lowering that driveway approach.
Yeah.
And
It's a steep uphill.
it's a steep
drive.
uphill, make it a nice little entry, make it softer. It'll also help lower the pad. And I think that'll solve a handful of issues. And if you can accomplish that, I know it can create some nuisance during construction, that it's more grading and a few more trucks, but keep in mind that it's just a period of time that happens and occurs. It's not the permanent structure that stays there forever, right? And so it's a balance for me that if we get the right fit, the grading's appropriate. From a design articulation, it's a little boxy. I'm not, I don't have a preference of architectural style, modern, cottage, whatever, but I do want to see what, if we're going to go modern, it needs to be a good fit and it needs to be softer. It's got to have some shapes and it's got to have some careful angles to support those views and the balance of privacy in that. I think this one was more designed economically, box on box. And I think it'd be a lot clever done, a lot more creatively done. And I know your firm can do that. But use materials to help soften it and bring that modern element to life. Landscape they were touching on, definitely got to get the mins and maxes incorporated in there because there's quite a few view lines through these neighboring properties. Windows, I can't even talk on these ones because I think
all gonna
re-articulating it, repositioning it's better. I think going closer to the hillside and just leveraging the lot, you have room. In that same regard, the tandem parking, I can't support that on this lot. You just have enough space. It's not a constraint. I think if you need the third car spot, you just need to creatively do it so it doesn't add mass and scale. But because it's off the street, I think there's room to play with it, or it really has to come down below the 3,600 square feet. 2 stories, I know that was kind of commented. A 2-story structure can go on the site. Like I want to make that known, like it can fit. We just need to get the other elements to play. So I think the square footage and those kind of things, it can be balanced and achieved in a different way. And I'm encouraged to see that. Lots of comments. I'm not going to go any deeper because most of them were covered, but I just kind of wanted to clarify that grading component is a really good tool to solve some of this. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I understand everything you're saying.
Good.
You got a lot thrown at you. The only comment I have is when you do the staking, when you come back and do the staking, can you please, I think at the Chamberlains, there's the lower floor pops out very closely to their house.
Yeah.
Can you stake that lower piece so we can see the impact of that?
Yeah, I already started getting a proposal from the staking company to come back out. What you'll see is little stakes 2 feet up from the ground because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
because we're grading the most at the back.
Right. I just mostly want to see the proximity that it
Right.
is to the Chamberlains, because we
Yeah.
might have you reduce that. I would take a look at maybe even, so you don't have to come back for a third hearing, maybe take a look at reducing that portion that sticks out close to the Chamberlains, because that's their outdoor living space.
Right.
Yeah. And then the other comment that I have, the deck that's between bathrooms 2 and bathroom 3, just get rid of it
Sure.
entirely. The Juliet balcony off of bedroom 3, I'm okay with it, especially if you rotate the property. And then, yeah, I think instead of repeating other board members, I think that's it. You've got a lot. Do you have any clarification questions for us?
No, I think I understand. It will be a redesign. I'll come back with something new as it'll be different, especially on the second floor.
Yeah, and I recommend breaking up the massing with different materials.
Yeah, we started to do that by introducing a siding material to various parts of the building, but without having the entire thing be
Right, yeah.
siding. And then we are proposing a stone near the entrance, kind of where you step down to the entry court after you go by the garage. We are introducing that, but maybe some color blocking will help too, and softer colors instead of white.
You're the designer.
Right.
We're gonna let you come back with your creativity.
I think
But
the,
I
the,
think-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I think we're all in favor of a continuance, so if there's no other further comments, maybe we suggest some dates for you of how far out you want to be for coming back.
Well,
Mr.
some of it
Gibson.
is contingent on being able to get a hold of Mr. Whitaker. Do we have to, but can I discuss with staff? I need to contact
I think you
Mr.
speak
Whitaker
with,
about lowering.
would
the-
Steve
the-
Koratani be the best connection for that? Steve?
Yeah.
Well, I do have, I've been talking to him.
Oh,
So I have his email and phone number, I believe.
For the easement.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you'll be in much better communication. You
Okay.
Exchange numbers with Steve.
Okay.
afterwards. You'll get.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Board
I
Member
think the
Gibbs, you-
neighbors collectively may help you there. I just had one follow-on comment. Materials are one thing, but one of my comment and Board Member Weil was it's a boxy look. And I think reducing the second floor and adding some articulation in addition to materials to bring to life the mid-century modern style that you have is really important, I think, for this project, given its location.
Okay. I get it.
Mrs. Jung?
It shouldn't be more than 2 months.
Okay, so maybe we
Well-
propose a date in September?
Yeah, we just need to make sure we factor in time for the resubmittal and then staff time to review the revised design and prepare a staff report. There are 2 meetings in September.
I think giving more time than 2 months would be helpful. I think there's some work to be done, not only with the easement, but working with the neighbors. And Karatami is a good person. He will work with you toward coming up with solutions. And I think with the other neighbors, they're all reasonable. So I'd give them the time to go through that process, maybe 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, and I'd like to note that I'm going to be absent for the second meeting.
Don't.
Oh.
Doesn't matter.
So are you thinking September or October would be preferred?
I'm sure our client would prefer it to be sooner rather than later. We can work quickly, but there are elements beyond my control.
So an option is that if, to avoid renoticing of a project, you could continue to a date in September, either the first meeting or the second meeting. And then if that time they require additional information, they could request a continuance.
So if it's second meeting's on when?
September 12th or September 26th.
So the 26th, and then the application would need to be in by August 26th?
Well, we would prefer probably at least 5 weeks in advance so that we could.
So what's that date?
Is there, what's in October? Is there 2 meetings in October? Perhaps the first week of October would be,
October 10th and October 24th.
yeah, I would think that would give you time to work with the neighbors, get through the city and
Well,
get back here.
why don't we let the applicant decide? Yeah, so you want the second meeting?
September
Yeah, in September.
26th.
Oh, staff, you can't be ready by then for the second meeting in September?
Oh, we could. I just wanted to make sure that we provide the applicant team with enough time to submit so that our staff can prepare it for the upcoming. So,
So you need 5 weeks in advance, 5 weeks
September 1, 2, 3,
in advance of the hearing.
August 29th. Is that what you said?
So
Oh, 22nd, sorry. Oh, August 22nd, submit by.
August 22nd. Okay,
If you're not in by then, you can request a.
right.
What's the
Do I have, okay, I'll talk to staff about how to request and so forth. Okay.
The 26th, September 26th?
That's the target, yes.
Chair, on item 5.7 at 31526 Vallejo Road, I request, or the board would approve a continuance to September 26th.
Second,
Board Member Coveney,
Yes.
Board Member Gibbs,
Yes.
Board Member Weil,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Nave,
yes.
and Chair Gannon.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0 with a continuance to September 26th. design review board. And thank you.
Garrett, can I interrupt?
Thank
Just,
you.
I'm sorry, Chair, can I ask Garrett a quick question? I need a phone number. I don't think we had the right phone number. I just want to make sure we have the right contact info.
What's your phone number, love?
I provide my card.
Yes.
Let's get good at that.
Can we adjourn? No? Okay, that's an adjournment
Second.
till, yeah.
What's that?
Joe, we're adjourned.